I'm Brad DeRoche. Welcome to my series on guitar fundamentals. This is lesson number 28, and in this lesson we're going to focus on practicing. Now I'm devoting the next 3 lessons to practicing, but even so it's just scratching the surface. There's so much to discuss and so little time. So to start with, in this lesson today, number 29, we're going to look at the what to practice part of practicing. I've kind of broken it up into a few different parts: what to practice, how to practice, and then beyond that. So in the first part, what to practice. A lot of times when people are first getting started with guitar, there's a big question in their mind of what is it that I should be practicing on a regular basis. And I think that's a very fair question and one that has to be answered well. So to start with, I believe that we have about 5 different areas of material that need to be practiced on a regular basis. So let me just first categorize those. The first area we can think of as warm-ups. Now some people like to do warm-ups and they really feel the need to get their hands warmed up and their mind warmed up. And so that's fine. And then there's other people that don't feel like warm-ups are necessary, or they don't do much with them. It doesn't really matter. I think it depends on the person, how much you warm up and how much you need to warm up. But anyway, let's call that one category of practicing is warming up. Then the next category for me is technical exercises. Now, technical exercises are concise exercises that are usually done to develop a specific part of your technique, hence the name, right? And within that, though, I have 5 different categories of technical drills, and they fall into these groups the way that I define them: scales, arpeggios, slurs, other techniques, which includes tremolo, rasguiato, ornaments, and those types of things, harmonics. Actually, the focus of the last few lessons has been on that. The previous ones were all those other things. So we've covered all of those in our fundamentals to some degree. So those are the first 4. So scales, arpeggios, slurs, other techniques such as tremolo, rasguiato, etc. And then a 5th category for me are fragments that will be gleaned from the repertoire we're working on. So these are specific problems drawn from our current repertoire. Okay, so I'll talk more about that in a later lesson. So just keep that in mind. So we have 5 different little broad organizing categories to think about with technique. Now, the packet that I gave you to go along with this series contains most of that material, and it's most everything that you need. So if you practice those scales and arpeggios and slurs, and you use those expressive techniques with them when you practice, and you pull some of the difficult things from your repertoire, you'll probably have pretty good technique if you work on that diligently. So anyway, that's the second category for me. So beyond warm-ups, we have technical practice. The third category is new repertoire. So new repertoire are the new pieces that you're working on currently, and they're the ones that are being developed and learned, maybe memorized if you need to memorize them, and so forth. New repertoire, I'm going to actually focus in the entire next video on new repertoire and how to learn it. And so anyway, we'll spend more time on it in the next video. I'll cut it short here. The 4th category, though, for me is old repertoire, or the pieces that you're maintaining or performing at this point in time. So these are the ones that are already learned, and you're trying to keep them in tip-top shape in your repertoire. That, to me, is a whole different category than the new ones that I'm learning, and so I treat them differently, and the way you practice them has to be different. And then there's a 5th category that a lot of people don't even think about when it comes to learning to play the instrument well, and that's kind of a research and other skills category, let's say. And those other skills could be things such as sight reading, could be thrown into this category, understanding the history behind a composer or a performer, the theory that you need to understand how the piece is constructed and the harmonic progressions and so forth, and other music related skills. And in today's day and age, that could be things like learning to record, how to edit videos, etc. All these other peripheral musical skills that go into developing yourself as a guitarist. So those are the 5 broad categories I feel like we need to practice on a fairly regular basis. Okay, so I think it's very useful that we do divide our practice into these different categories, not just for the sake of our sanity to know what they are, but to know how to organize our practice around them. Now, let's go into the next layer beyond that. Do we have to practice all of these things every single day? Maybe not. But instead of thinking about the practice as being a single day routine, I like to look at it more like a week. So I have a week to get through all the material that I need to. Some of it has to be played every day, some of it doesn't. So old pieces that I need to maintain that I'm not performing currently, but I need to keep in my repertoire for a much later date, I don't need to practice those every day, maybe a few times a week. Anyway, so let's take a look at our practice session as a week long and divide it into 7 days instead of what I have to do every single day, and that being the same day after day after day, because I don't think that's the best way or most efficient way to practice. So we have 5 big broad categories of things to practice, and the week is our schedule, not the day. All right. Now, moving beyond that, let's take a look at the first area, the warm-up area. So I'll start to dig into these areas a little bit at a time over the next few videos. So let's start with warm-ups and see what we can figure out there. Now, warm-ups, I think, involve both our hands, our body, and our mind. And so the mental part of warming up was something I've skipped over for much of my career, and I find it was very detrimental that I did that. So I think warming up for many people should involve a few minutes of just mindfulness or meditation or whatever to get yourself focused and ready to practice. So my suggestion is that you take 5 minutes, just a few, or even less, a few minutes, and sit quietly and just follow your breath. It's the simplest type of meditation. And the way that I do this is I just breathe in and breathe out. So in through the nose, out through the mouth, and I count. That's 1. So 1, 2. So I'm breathing naturally. I wouldn't breathe that fast. But anyway, I just count the breath, and I just try and keep track of that, and I only think about breathing in and breathing out. And other thoughts, as they enter my mind, I just sort of let them go and just try to keep my focus on breathing. It's that simple. Just breathe in and breathe out and keep yourself focused, thinking about the act of breathing. You're not trying to force your breath. You're not trying to breathe faster or slower. Just nice, long, slow, deep breaths. Maybe hold it for a moment at the top once you've inhaled. Exhale. Simple. But the important part is the focus part. So when you're breathing in, that's probably slowing the heart rate, calming the body. But then the focus part, keeping your mind centered on thinking about only breathing and nothing else, letting the other thoughts go as they come into your mind. That's really crucial for me, and it helps to settle me as I'm getting ready to practice. And I usually practice better because of it. So anyway, think about starting with some very simple meditation, just a couple moments of that even, or a couple minutes. Then the next thing I think that we need to do is to develop a useful warm-up routine, one that's actually advantageous and helpful for us. Now, a lot of times people, when they warm up, they do the same things that they've done for perhaps years, the same exercises. I'm going to start out with open string arpeggios or slurs or taps or whatever. Great, that's fine if you want to do that, but to me, doing the same things over and over and over isn't all that useful. I don't gain much from it. So what I suggest you try out is to think about the areas of slurs, arpeggios, scales, and other techniques that you're not good at. What are they? What are those things that you don't do well? And make those a part of your warm-up routine. So let's say tremolo is one of the things that you don't do well. Make tremolo a part of your warm-up routine. Make it really easy. It could just be something so simple. Maybe something like this. I'm just going to do a very simple tremolo exercise with the thumb on the third string, AMI on the second string. I'm going to focus on light touch and making it really easy. I'm not going to try and force my hands into something very athletic in the very beginning. So the important idea here, the takeaway, is that we think about making the warm-up, instead of something that we just do kind of routinely, mindlessly over and over and over, make it something that you're not so good at. Focus on your weaknesses and make a simple, kind of easy exercise out of it so it becomes part of your warm-up. And warm-ups for me are, maybe 15 minutes long total, just to get your mind and body in the groove. Okay, so maybe that's it. That's all we need to talk about when it comes to warming up. My suggestion is that you make it easy on your hands. Start with something for your mind first to calm your mind and body down. Then make it easy on the hands. And try things that maybe you're not so good at, but don't force yourself into a really difficult, physically demanding practice to start with. Make it really simple, but make it about things that you're not so good at. Okay, then from there, let's move on to the technical part. Technique practice is what most people think of when they think of practicing, like getting better at scales or arpeggios or whatever. And we address those at a very basic level throughout these videos up to this point in this series. When it comes to technique, besides those 5 different broad categories of scales, arpeggios, slurs, other techniques, and fragments from your repertoire, what can we do? Well, here's what I would recommend. If you have that packet of materials that I handed out to you, you can use that as your guide. You can develop your own if you would like. Now, if you don't have that packet and you need it, send me an email. I'd be more than happy to send a copy to you. Anyways, what I think is really crucial is that you create measurable results for your practice. What do I mean by that? You need a measurable outcome. So let's say I'm learning a new scale pattern. So I'm going to try this new G major scale pattern with a modern right hand fingering. Well, I need to figure out where I am right now. Where is my ability today? And where do I need to get to? So I need to use a metronome to measure how fast I'm going. And I need to kind of play at the outer edge of my ability, not beyond where I'm falling apart and sloppy, but at the outer edge. So in order to develop our technique, we need to push ourselves to the outer edge of our skill on a regular basis. And how do we know where that is? Well, we have to measure it. Measuring it usually means through a device like a metronome or something. So you need to know how fast can you play now and where are you trying to get to, and then you just gradually increase that over time. So you need a measurable outcome. All right, so when you're thinking about your technique, don't just go through the motions of playing some arpeggios, some scales, and some slurs. Pick ones that you maybe do one little batch for perhaps an entire week. Like with Giuliani arpeggios, the way Scott Tennant divided them up in the Pumping Nylon book is really fabulous. So he's got about a dozen different groups in there, and you could just use one group as your arpeggio practice for an entire week. But when you're doing it, why are you playing it? You need to practice in such a way that you are trying to create some new skills. You're pushing yourself beyond your current capability, so you need measurable outcomes for that. So that's the best way to describe technique practice. It's going to be different for every single person, but we have these broad categories that we all need to practice, and we need to push ourselves to the outer edge of our skills, and we need to have measurable outcomes so we know if we're reaching our new levels or not, and to adjust our practice accordingly. Anyway, I hope that helps you some. I hope that you come back for the next video. We're going to talk more about practicing in the next one. All right, until then, have a fantastic day, and I'll see you soon. Cheers.